In this lesson, we're going to do a case study to look at MAM solutions, okay, mobility application management, but we're also going to compare MAM to MDM. And then in the next lesson will be a demonstration where I'll show you a Zoho MDM tool. But we're going to use, let's say, a scenario where Brio has a customer and they're a homogeneous Microsoft shop. So they do pretty much everything Microsoft. So for their BYOD or their COPE solution, they're going to go ahead and use Microsoft Intune. So let's go ahead and kind of look at that solution for this particular customer. Notice that they have three different types of devices that they're going to be aware of. They have corporate managed devices or company managed devices. So they enroll the devices that we supply or they supply in both a single user and a multi-user scenario for their business. There's also employee managed devices where they can enable productivity and provide data security in scenarios where the employees are bringing their own devices. And then maybe a third solution or a third scenario is the third-party managed device, where we're going to extend data protection to devices that are supplied from elsewhere. So for example, this company is dealing with contractors. They have contractor devices, or maybe in public kiosks. Notice that underlying this are the two main services, MDM and MAM. So let's compare what MDM is to MAM. MDM, mobile device management, will enroll devices for management. They'll provision the settings. They'll provide digital certificates and profiles. They'll do monitoring, measurements, and they'll report device compliance. They can also remove corporate data from devices, so data leakage prevention or data loss prevention. MAM, on the other hand, will be used to publish mobile apps to the users, to configure and update the apps, to report app inventory and usage, and to secure and remove corporate data within the mobile apps. What are some of the main EMM issues when we deal with especially MAM? Well, user permissions. User permissions and applications can be set up and centrally managed in the MDM itself. Or in this example with our organization, it would be better to link it to Active Directory, okay? But we can use other directory services. Remember, with Brio, this particular client is a Microsoft shop, but we could use Univention UCS, which is very popular, Apache Directory, eDirectory, or Open LDAP. And as far as user permissions goes, that's the best case scenario to link it to the existing directory service, okay? So for example, let's say at Brio, we have a different customer that's not a Microsoft shop, right? So we're going to recommend to this other customer that they use a very popular WSO2 identity server for their mobile users. So by default, the WSO2 identity server has a wide variety of solutions. It has user permissions, it has application permissions, it has time-based restrictions, it has context-aware management, it even has mobile AUP security restrictions. So this solution from WSO2 has an identity server, and they have four main roles, okay? So they have a super admin, which they may or may not use. They have an admin, they have an everyone user, and they have system user roles. So within these roles, for example, they can have granular permissions. So an example or a case study for this other customer of Brio that's not a Microsoft shop, we're going to bring in this other very powerful third-party solution. So for example, as you can see on the screen, under the admin role, you can see the types of granular permissions and rights that we can grant. For example, admin configures security. By the way, we can apply different admins to different roles and permissions. So we can have junior admins, maybe that have the admin monitor logs permissions or the admin manage search permissions, and we can have other higher level admins that are maybe going to be doing security identity management user management, password management, and profile management. So this is just an example of the kind of granular control we can get in a mobile device management and mobile application management scenario by using roles and permissions and using a product, a very popular product known as WSO2 EMM Identity Services. Some other issues you need to be aware of is that of geolocation. Okay, now there's three different categories of geolocation. There's IP, there's W3C API, and there's geocoding. Let me break these down for you. IP geolocation is a technique that identifies an entity's IP address. Then it determines what country, state, city, zip code, organization, or location that IP address has been assigned to. Okay, and there are several geolocation providers that do this IP geolocation in the industry. The W3C geolocation API is basically a newer movement by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C. And this is a move to standardize an interface to collect the geographical location information for a client-side mobility device. The most common, of course, would be the IP address, but there's also Wi-Fi and Bluetooth MAC address. There's also RFID. You can also identify it based on Wi-Fi connection locations or the GPS and GCM CDMA cell IDs. The third is geocoding, and geocoding is closely related to geolocation. It's the process of finding related latitude and longitude coordinates from other geographic data, for example, city or address. Now, we have geolocation and we also have geofencing. Geofencing leverages the GPS satellite network or you can use local radio frequency providers like a Wi-Fi node in a mesh environment, for example, or Bluetooth beacons. And you're putting up a virtual boundary around a location. So a geofence gets linked to hardware and software applications that respond to this boundary in a way that basically is controlled by a program. So let me use, I'm in Texas and we have all kinds of sayings in Texas. One of my favorite sayings is, you don't put a $1,000 fence around a $100 horse, okay? That's a good thing to remember when you're a security practitioner. But in Texas, one of the early commercial uses of geofencing was in our livestock industry, where you'd have cattle in a herd and they're equipped with GPS sensors or like tags, right? And if the herd moves outside of the geofence, then the rancher will get an alert, okay? So you can think about these similar systems that are deployed to protect and monitor, for example, corporate vehicle fleets, in a large seller retail of automobiles, for example. And you can apply this to a wide variety of scenarios, especially in that kind of mesh networking environment, for example, like a big amusement park or some other areas or a large campus, okay? So geofencing is a concept, an issue that we have with enterprise mobility management. We also have geotagging, and geotagging is a feature of smartphones and some digital cameras. This is the process of adding geographical identification to photographs, to videos, to websites, even to SMS messages. So it's kind of the equivalent of adding a 10-digit grid coordinate to everything you put on the internet, okay? So it's cool because geotagging allows people to know where you took a picture, okay? Or where you attended that concert, right? Like I geotagged, a video when I went to Rush R40 a couple years ago, their last Rush tour. So, I geotagged pictures and videos. So you can post this and you can retain, these geotagged visual memories. However, there is a risk, okay, to this, and it's called social surveillance by GPS, okay? So stalkers and burglars and attackers and hackers can take that public geotagging information, that data, identify your location, your home, your activities. And this is very important, especially when it comes to your kids, okay, and minors with the capability to geotag their media. And you need to realize the risks involved with underage kids and minors that are geotagging things, and there's obviously nefarious individuals out there that are going to take advantage of that information. So we need to realize, all of the risks that are involved with some of these new technologies. That's really a big trend that we have as security practitioners, is understanding the vulnerabilities and risks of new technologies and new capabilities, especially with mobile devices and the Internet of Things and the IoE, Internet of Everything. So since geotagging is one of the most dangerous things I've actually talked about, let me give you some countermeasures, okay? First, realize all the risks involved. Know when to use the geotagging feature and when not to, okay? Know how to disable your cell phone or your camera's geotagging feature. If you're using geotagging websites, okay, like Yelp and Foursquare and Facebook's Places, where they can pinpoint your location, make sure you understand. There's also things like Flickr and Picasa can do geotagging. So you need to understand when those automatic features are turned on. So you want to use those with great care. Be aware when you post your pictures and what geotagged information you're leaving behind. And again, let me state the importance of this feature when it comes to minors and your kids, okay? Now, another thing we want to be aware of is the proliferation of unsigned apps, okay, on mobile phones. So at Brio, we like to pick on Android, right? Because of its open source nature and how easy it is to install APK files from an unofficial or unknown source, developers need to be signing the applications with their private key and certificate, okay? And this is contained in a key store file before the app is installed on your corporate user devices. So the signing certificate must stay consistent throughout the lifetime of the app, and typically an expiry date of about 25 years in the future. So make sure that you keep that key store, that private key, safe, maybe on an HSM system, for example. And so understand that a couple of things here with geotagging is dangerous, but also making sure that we have control over unsigned apps.